In the modern landscape of ambition, reinvention, and curated identities, The Great Gatsby remains unsettlingly relevant. In an era where personal brands are crafted as meticulously as business pitches, where success is measured by visibility rather than substance, Fitzgerald's classic reveals itself not merely as a tragic love story, but as a case study in the psychology of desire, self-delusion, and the hidden costs of chasing status. Jay Gatsby, at first glance, appears to be the blueprint for success. He is wealthy, mysterious, and admired, an enigmatic figure who has seemingly cracked the code of the American dream. But beneath the tailored suits and champagne-fueled parties lies a man whose entire existence is built on a foundation of illusions. The Great Gatsby follows Nick Carraway, a Midwesterner drawn into the orbit of Gatsby's lavish lifestyle and carefully constructed identity. Yet as Nick observes, the glittering facade conceals something far more fragile, a man entirely imprisoned by the past, convinced that money and status can resurrect what time has inevitably eroded. The algorithm of desire. Gatsby's fixation on Daisy Buchanan is often mistaken for romantic devotion. In truth, it reflects something more psychologically complex. He does not love Daisy, the living, breathing, flawed individual, but rather an idealized, unchanging image of her frozen in memory. She has become less a person and more a placeholder for everything he believes will complete him: love, acceptance, legitimacy. This cognitive distortion is hardly unique to Gatsby. In psychological terms, it mirrors what contemporary culture has normalized, projecting hopes and insecurities onto curated symbols. Whether it's a distant crush, a dream job, or a social media influencer's lifestyle, the external object becomes a vessel for internal longing. Daisy, in Gatsby's mind, is no longer capable of imperfection because she no longer exists as a person, only as an idea. The tragedy is inevitable, because no reality can compete with fantasy, especially one sustained for years in isolation from the truth. The productivity illusion. Long before the rise of hustle culture and personal optimization, Gatsby epitomized the ethos of self-made success. His adolescent schedules, relentless discipline, and strategic reinvention align perfectly with the 21st century narrative of grind culture, the belief that with enough discipline and work ethic, one can overcome any barrier, rewrite any story, transcend any origin. And in material terms, Gatsby succeeds. He amasses wealth, status, and notoriety, yet the promised internal fulfillment remains conspicuously absent. His success is performative, his confidence brittle, and his achievements tainted by the knowledge that they were never an end in themselves, only a means to engineer an impossible reunion with the past. This reveals the hidden flaw in the productivity myth. Achievement without internal reconciliation becomes yet another layer of performance, incapable of providing the wholeness it advertises. The intermittent reinforcement trap. Psychologists have long studied the most addictive forms of human behavior, those driven by intermittent reinforcement where rewards arrive unpredictably, keeping the participant locked in a state of anticipation. It's the same principle behind gambling, social media likes, and, as Fitzgerald shows, Gatsby's parties. Each elaborate gathering, each display of wealth carries the possibility that Daisy will arrive. Each meticulously orchestrated moment offers a tantalizing glimpse of success, yet the payoff remains elusive. This pattern is self-perpetuating, not because the reward ever materializes, but because the possibility keeps hope alive. In this way, Gatsby's tragedy mirrors contemporary cycles of ambition. The endless pursuit of the next promotion, the viral moment, the external validation that always seems just out of reach. Psychological comparison game. At the core of Gatsby's identity crisis lies a fundamental act of comparison between himself and Tom Buchanan, between self-made wealth and inherited status, between aspiration and entitlement. Tom represents the unattainable ease of those born into privilege, a life Gatsby can mimic but never truly access. Fitzgerald's critique remains piercing in a world increasingly defined by social media-fueled comparison. The curated highlights of others' lives serve as constant reminders of what feels lacking in one's own. The tragedy is compounded by the realization that those admired from a distance, like Tom and Daisy, often lack substance, yet their positions remain unshaken. Gatsby's efforts to bridge this gap reveal the futility of chasing status through performance. The deeper truth is that belonging, when pursued through deception or mimicry, becomes hollow even in victory. The fractured self and the shadow. The Jung's concept of the shadow, the repressed, hidden aspects of the self, offers a potent lens through which to understand Gatsby. His rejection of James Gatz, the impoverished farm boy from North Dakota, is not merely cosmetic but psychological. To inhabit the role of Jay Gatsby, he must exile the origins, vulnerabilities, and perceived shortcomings that do not fit the narrative. Yet the psyche resists such fragmentation. Gatsby's awkwardness, his social insecurity among the old money elite, his obsessive need for validation, all betray the presence of the disowned self, leaking through the cracks of his constructed identity. Modern hustle culture encourages similar fractures. The demand to project competence, success, and relentless ambition often comes at the cost of authenticity. The shadow, unacknowledged, undermines the very image being so carefully maintained. The green light as delusion. Few symbols in literature carry the quiet weight of the green light at the end of Daisy's dock. To Gatsby, it represents not just Daisy, but the culmination of all his striving, the idea that the future can redeem the past, that longing can be satisfied through possession. In reality, the green light is nothing more than a navigational aid, its significance entirely a product of projection. This speaks to a universal psychological trap, mistaking external objects for the source of internal fulfillment. The dream job, the ideal relationship, the financial windfall. These pursuits often carry the implicit belief that achieving them will dissolve insecurity or loneliness. Yet, as countless studies in behavioral psychology reveal, external accomplishments rarely provide sustained psychological well-being when they serve as stand-ins for unresolved inner conflict. The green situation, integration over performance. The alternative to Gatsby's endless performance is found in Jung's notion of individuation, the process of becoming whole through self-awareness and integration. It requires confronting the shadow, reconciling ambition with authenticity, and dismantling the masks crafted for external approval. Importantly, this is not a rejection of ambition, but its reorientation. Success, in this framework, becomes an outgrowth of self-understanding rather than a substitute for it. One's goals align with personal values rather than cultural expectation or unresolved insecurity. This path, unlike Gatsby's, offers no shortcuts, no guaranteed applause, and no neatly packaged identity, but it does offer the possibility of genuine fulfillment, the kind rooted in self-possession rather than social performance. The green original life, waiting to begin. Perhaps the most tragic element of Gatsby's story is not his failure to win Daisy, but his failure to inhabit his own life. Psychologists describe the provisional life as a state of suspended existence. A period where one's real life is always deferred, waiting for the right conditions, the next achievement, the final piece that will unlock happiness. Gatsby exists entirely in this liminal state. The present moment is an inconvenience, tolerated only as a means to an imagined future. His wealth, his parties, his self-invention, all serve a narrative that never materializes, leaving him psychologically homeless even amidst material success. This phenomenon extends far beyond fiction. Countless individuals postpone contentment, self-acceptance, or presence, conditioned to believe that life only begins once certain milestones are achieved. Yet, as Fitzgerald's narrative reminds us, life is not on hold. It is passing, moment by moment, regardless of whether one chooses to participate. The green status game as a hollow pursuit. Finally, The Great Gatsby delivers a brutal indictment of the status game itself. The Buchanans, emblematic of inherited privilege, move through life with careless detachment, insulated by wealth yet devoid of substance. Gatsby, for all his striving, cannot penetrate their world, not because he lacks money, but because status, once inherited, is rarely granted to outsiders. The deeper irony is that Gatsby, in many ways, surpasses those he admires, through ambition, creativity, and resilience. Yet his self-worth remains tethered to their recognition, a tragic miscalculation that echoes through modern status anxiety. Fitzgerald's message is clear. Admiration rooted in hollow social hierarchies leads not to belonging but to perpetual alienation. The green light will always be there. The green story endures not simply because of its portrayal of love or wealth, but because it exposes enduring psychological truths. The seductive nature of illusion, the danger of fractured identity, and the quiet tragedy of living in service of a future that never arrives. The green light still shines, on docks, on screens, in office windows late at night. It represents everything people chase to feel worthy, loved, and complete. But as Fitzgerald understood, the light itself offers no answers. What remains is the choice, to pursue an unattainable fantasy or to turn inward, confront the shadow, and build a life anchored not in illusion, but in authenticity. The real life, flawed, imperfect, but undeniably present, is happening now. The question is not whether the green light can be reached, but whether one is willing to look away from it long enough to see what's already here.